Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Years ago, when I worked in public accounting, for those who don't know, I was a tax consultant with one of the large accounting firms. I don't want to say it's a cutthroat environment, but they work you hard. You get paid well, you have nice offices, you have nice clients, they expect a lot. And so there was certainly a lot of stress that went with it, a lot of fun, learned a lot, but there were a lot of interactions with other professionals. And, a lot of times people out in corporate America, they kind of occupy their own little silo. Here in this environment, everybody's kind of doing the same thing. We're all tax consultants. We have our own different clients we're working on, but we're all kind of tax consultants, in a way, kind of competing, in a way, collaborating. At any rate, there was one particular individual who was in the office, and knew him pretty well. We actually went to law school together. And I had found out that another one of our colleagues had just found out she was pregnant. And I ran into my colleague, his name is Mark, and I ran into him in the hallway, in the cubicles. And I said, "Hey, Mark, did you hear Rita's expecting?" Figuring, hey, this is joyous news. I mean, these are our friends, and she's expecting a baby, and this is great. Aren't we happy for her? We've all gotten to know each other. This is wonderful. And he looked at me and his face got really long and he says, "Oh crap." I'm like, "Why? What's the matter?" He says, now I am one step closer to being the one that gets fired. He was kind of intimating that, now that she was expecting, now that she was pregnant, that she was untouchable and somebody that couldn't be fired, which there's a grain of truth to that. Certainly, that's a little more touchy. But what really struck me about that situation is where did he get that? Because nobody had ever communicated, "Hey, here's the pecking order. She's on the bottom of the totem pole and you're second. Oh, now that she's expecting, you're second on the totem pole." None of that was ever communicated. Somehow or another, he read that into indirect communications, nonverbal cues, somebody getting off the elevator, not making eye contact with him, thinking the worst about that. And it just has always stuck with me because communication is just such a messy thing. We say things and it's taken wrong. Things aren't said and it's taken wrong. We tell ourselves stories, and like I said, it's just a mess. And I brought back onto the podcast. I had this particular podcast, I've got Meredith Bell back on. She was in episode 530, which released on September 28th, 2022. So you can go back and listen to that one as well. That one, we really kind of got sidetracked talking about impact and influence. But what I wanted to originally talk to her about was her book, Connect with Your People, Mastering the Top 10 Communication Skills. And I don't know that we'll get into all top 10. We might get to 2.3 of the top communication skills. But Meredith is the co-founder and president of Grow Strong Leaders, and they publish software tools and books that help people build strong relationships at work and as well as at home. She's got a podcast. She works with lots of people, just helping them level up. And we're going to talk about this book. So Meredith, welcome back. Thank you again for coming back.
Oh, thank you, Frank, for inviting me back. I really enjoyed our first conversation, and I'm looking forward to this one where we go deeper into this whole messy area, as you say, of communication skills.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's, you heard my story there. You've actually heard it twice because I told you I was going to tell it. And it is so true that we think we're going to be communicating something to somebody. Well, here's another story. I'm talking to my wife this morning. This episode's coming out in December, and we're recording it here in early October. So we're leading up to Thanksgiving, and my wife's family generally comes to town. And, all the kids are kind of grown, and, some want to maybe stay in a hotel or stay somewhere else or wherever. It's not the days when everyone was 5 years old, sleeping on a single futon in the basement. Now the 12 kids all need their space, and they've got their spouses or significant others. And I was just kind of mapping out, hey, this is how I think it's going to play out, and we need to do this, this, and this. And she kind of snapped at me a little bit, not in a bad way, but it's like she had a totally different way of thinking about things. And in the moment, it felt like she was mad at me. Like, I'm just trying to help solve a problem. I'm not trying to create problems. And I just learned to shut up at that point, right? It's like, okay, you know what? I don't need to die on this hill today or ever. But somehow or another, my communication, my intent to help communication was taken in a different way. Or maybe it wasn't. I'm not sure. I'll find out. But again, communication is messy.
Yes. Well, and Frank, just having you tell that story, so many of us get in situations where we seem to be crossing in the night, passing in the night. We're not connecting with the other person. And what we often don't do is simply pause and ask, wow, or observe, wow, it seems like you reacted pretty negatively to what I was saying. I'm just curious, what did I say that kind of set you off? Because that was certainly not my intention. To open the conversation to learn from that person, because what can happen is we each make assumptions about each other. And as you mentioned in your opening, we can make up stories that have no basis in reality. We just assume that's what they meant, or assume that's why they did something.
Yep.
When we just don't take time to check it out.
Yeah. And I think the reality is we don't know what's gone into the other person's head, right? I mean, my wife could be thinking about, oh, I have 6 other things to worry about. Thanksgiving's over a month away. Let's not, in other words, what she's saying is, I don't want to talk about it right now because it's not really important right now. I've got 3 meetings today and that's what's important, but I'm reading into it. Oh, she doesn't like me meddling in where her family's going to be sleeping or staying, and so we don't know those things. And it becomes messy. And it becomes, I think it's a little easier at home. Maybe not. It's hard at work because we don't, I know what my wife's day is going to be because we talk about it. And, I know she has a busy day coming up. When I'm at the office dealing with professionals, I don't know what their home life is.
Mm-hmm.
It could be something terrible. It could be something with a client that I don't know about. Those are, we're really delving into the unknown. We're trying to communicate. And, that gets down, that all plays into listening. If they're stressed or preoccupied with something a child has done or a parent, they're not listening or not listening. They're not hearing what we're saying. I mean, it's just, I'm going to put it this way, and then we'll kind of jump into the subject matter of communication. I'm amazed that more things don't go wrong. That, to me, that's the amazing thing, that we just don't have more just knock down, drag out fist fights in this world, because, and I'm kidding, obviously, but that things don't go worse than they do, because there's so many variables to communicating, so many variables.
Yeah, that's really true. Starting with the fact that we don't teach people communication skills in school.
Yeah.
And most folks don't grow up in homes where the parents have had training in being good communicators. And so there's this cycle that gets created. So when people come to the workplace, they're just not equipped with skills that are really important to forming good relationships in their team, with coworkers or with their manager, up and down the organization. And then if they were raised in a home where there were some dysfunctions, then you've got that, playing into the whole dynamic as well. So I think it would be helpful to maybe get specific about certain skills for people to be aware of that really make a difference in their relationships, because they don't have to be complicated. There don't have to be, too many steps involved. It's the general principle is come with a curious, caring heart and mind.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good jumping off point to one of the aspects that you and I were touching on before we hit record. When you're in school, you are taught communication. Let's think high school, right? Because there's kind of a uniform curriculum. All right. You're going to have English. You're going to learn to write. You know what? I'm speaking from my experience. You're going to read a book. You're going to do book reports. You're going to learn to communicate. Never talk about listening. Never talk about listening. Be clear in what you're communicating, but you're never really taught about stopping and listening to what somebody has to say. And I think that's where that's a big source of the issue right there.
Well, and part of it is we assume listening means taking turns talking,
Right.
and unfortunately, that's really not what it means at all. If you're really in the role of listener, your goal is to truly understand what the other person is trying to convey and put yourself in their shoes. Sometimes we're so busy with our own stuff that we're, let's say at work, that we're working on. If somebody comes in and wants to talk, we think, what's the minimum I can say here or exchange here so I can get back to what I was doing? And so the first step, it seems to me, is looking at, is this a moment where somebody needs me to listen? And if so, I need to adjust my mindset so that I'm going to be present for this person. And that means setting aside what you're doing. I can tell you from personal experience where I've been on a phone call, where the person can't see me. I might be scanning an email. If I do that, I do not hear that part of what they're saying when my attention, because the human mind really can only focus on one thing at a time effectively. And especially when it comes to relationships. So just being aware and being willing to give your full attention to that person is step one.
I'm glad you said that, because as of late, what I find myself doing, and I felt bad about doing it, is if somebody wants to get acquainted and they're suggesting a phone call, I'm pushing them to a Zoom call. And I get it, we can't all be in person. And that's fine. But you and I, this will come out on audio only, but you and I can see each other. So I can see how I can't see totally how my words hit, but I can see I can see you take something that I'm saying I intend to be cute as for what it is, as opposed to being offended or whatever. But I'm here, I'm engaged with you, and I'm like you. It's like when I'm on the phone with somebody, it's, I'm retying my shoes, I'm, wandering around, what else, watering plants, whatever it might be. And that's bad. I'm assuming the same thing's kind of happening on the other end, or best case, they're driving, which is, still they're not listening.
Right. What I've learned to do, Frank, here's a tip for folks. If you're on a phone call and you're concerned about being distracted by whatever's in your environment, I close my eyes so that I can't see anything else. And I'm paying attention to what they're saying. And occasionally, if I need to write down, take a note, I'll do that. But otherwise, I keep my eyes closed, and that prevents me from getting distracted. I've had to learn these tools, strategies over time because of having embarrassed myself at missing something that somebody was saying and then realizing, oh golly, my mind wandered there.
Yeah.
So I think that's really a key element. And not, unfortunately, most people, when they're listening, are waiting for the person to stop talking so they can jump in, either with their opinion, here's what I think you should do, advice, something that does not convey to the other person, I really understand what you're saying. So one of the important things to do in good listening is to say back in your own words what you understand the person is trying to communicate, so they feel like you get it. And you can even try to reflect back the feelings they're having. That connects with empathy. So, to say, gosh, it sounds like you're really frustrated over this situation, or or you just assume that's the feeling. Oh, you're really frustrated, aren't you? So they have a chance to respond and let you know, yeah, I'm really frustrated, or no, it's not frustration, I'm really hurt, so they can clarify. So you're helping them kind of clarify their own thinking about what it is they're talking about. Because one of the greatest gifts we can give someone is to help them realize another person understood what they're saying, and we help them clarify their own thinking about it. They may not want any advice or suggestions from us at all. They may just need to vent, or they may need to think about it out loud as they talk about it. So finding out, in fact, one of my business partners has said to me in the past, I'm not looking for your advice here. So that that gives me the awareness. All right, I'm listening to just let her talk and not try to guide her or respond, because those of us that like to help, which is most of us, we want to listen for, how can I help this person? That may not be what they need.
While you were talking, I was listening, but I wrote 2 words. I wrote what and why. And that, we need to listen to what the person is saying, but you just kind of hit on it. We also need to be listening to why they're saying it. And I'll have a similar conversation with my wife. Is this something you want me to come up with a solution for, or are you just wanting to vent? I'm good either way. I just kind of I need to know.
Yeah.
Which direction we're going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, in the moment too, if we're really listening well, and the person's, and we say something, the person shows a particular facial expression or has certain body language, we can respond to that too, because we're listening for the whole person, not just words they're saying. The tone of voice conveys a lot too. So we can say, gosh, it sounds like you're really upset with me. Is there something I've done or have said that you're upset about? Just to ask, because it may not be you at all. It may be something that happened right before the conversation. We just don't know. And we get into trouble when we make assumptions, like you gave in your earlier example, where we create these stories about why somebody's treating us a particular way that may not be based in reality at all. And for us to make it our reality then really can distort not just the situation, but the relationship.
Yeah. It's a horrible assumption of, just reading into situations, reading into nonverbal cues, and reading into things that people say, and they might not really feel that way. Just saying it out of frustration. I mean, it's I think we all deal with a degree of regret, saying the wrong things in the wrong ways to the wrong people, and again, I keep using the word. It's messy. It can be a messy thing. And I just recorded a video that I shared to some of our members, and as I'm watching it, it's like, okay, what was I thinking when I came up with those words? Because now I can think of a better way to say it. So
our version, Paula and Denny and I have worked together now for 31 years, and our version of messy is communication is hard. That's just a given, because human beings are messy. We don't always relay what we want to say in a logical sequence that's easy for someone to track. And that's why listening itself requires a lot of energy and attention. It's not an automatic at all.
Yeah. Now in the book, it's for our listeners, the book is Connect with Your Team, Mastering the Top 10 Communication Skills. I'm speaking with Meredith Bell. And her co-author is Dennis Coates. Is that how you pronounce his name? Denny, as you referred to him. You guys spent a lot of time talking about feedback in the book.
Because again, most of us aren't very good at that, giving or receiving.
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree. I find myself sometimes seeking feedback, seeking advice from people where I know what the answer is going to be. And I'll stop myself. You know what? I'm not going to ask that person because I know what they're going to say, I'm not going to go to my assistant and say, hey, what do you think about this? Because she's not really going to give me an unvarnished answer because I'm her boss. That's not fair. It doesn't get me anything, right? Although I did have a woman who worked for me for 5 years who was very good at critiquing things I wrote, things I was putting together. But she was kind of the unicorn, very unique in that sense. She was nice about it.
But Frank, thinking of that, a lot of people will be willing to give honest feedback about something that's going on if there's trust. When people withhold that, part of it could be they're not sure of how the other person's going to receive it. And that's why, to me, why we have 3 separate chapters, one on giving constructive feedback, one on receiving such feedback, and then a third one on expressing appreciation and giving positive feedback. Because too often the attitude is, well, that's what we're paying them for. I shouldn't have to give them positive feedback. They don't need strokes all the time. But we all need to know when we're doing things well, so we know to keep repeating those. And another core need that we all have is acknowledgement, that we matter. The work we're doing, the contributions we're making, somebody's noticing that we're doing those and speaks out, not in just oh, you're the best, not in a broad, general, generic way, but more specifically. Let's say that, Frank, you and I were in a meeting together and I was leading it, and you noticed another person wasn't participating. And so during the meeting, you might say, hey, Meredith, we haven't heard from John yet. I'd like to hear what he has to say. So afterwards, I could say, hey, Frank, I am so glad that you brought up the fact that I hadn't called on John yet. Thank you for noticing and doing that. So what have I done? I've noticed that you did it. I've acknowledged it. And I've given you permission to keep doing things like that in the future, because I've shown you I value it. And so that kind of thing, when we see someone do something positive and we comment on it to them, that conveys to them that matters to us. So we're likely to get more of that behavior.
Yeah, no, I like that. It's I like the specificity of that, of that approach, as opposed to you're the best, you're the greatest. That's
or way to go,
Yeah, right. Yeah,
that doesn't tell me what behavior you valued.
Right.
And this is really good for kids too. Whatever we're talking about, if you think about this with family members as well as people at work, it's all universally applicable.
Yeah, no, it's very true. It's and our lives are tied up in relationships, and relationships are held together by communication. So, everything, and again, here we are, we've gotten through, we're 23 minutes into this thing, in this episode, and we've covered 2 topics.
Let's do the point 3 that you promised up front.
That's right. I'll leave that up to you. What's the point 3?
One of the things that I think is so important about receiving feedback is we need to reframe it in our minds, so we have the mindset truly that feedback is a gift. So think about when somebody gives you a gift, you smile, you're happy to receive it. Well, when somebody's going to give us constructive feedback, we may not feel like smiling, but we sure can say thank you.
Yeah.
Because typically when somebody's giving us feedback that's hard to deliver, first of all, they've given a lot of thought to it before they ever came to you. Most of us don't like conflict. A lot of people are concerned about how's this person going to react. So you can bet that person has been rehearsing in their mind what they're going to say and how they're going to say it so that you won't react negatively to it. So recognize the effort they've put into it before they've ever talked to you. And so when they bring that information, you can say, wow, I didn't realize I was doing that. thank you for bringing it to my attention. And if it's something you did specifically to them, apologize. You just wouldn't believe how far an apology will go for setting things right. And just to say, I'm so sorry, or I apologize. I did not realize it had that impact on you. And then to state, what is it you are going to commit to do in the future? Because they're wondering, did it serve me to talk to you about this? Or, is this going to be something I'm going to regret having brought up? But if you can have the emotional intelligence to say, you know what, I want to improve in this area. So if you see me doing this again, I really want you to let me know that I've done it. Please continue giving me this feedback because I'm committed to doing it right. I do not want to do this to you or anyone else. Maybe you have a habit of interrupting people or finishing their sentences, and somebody finally got frustrated with it and brought it to your attention. And so to let them know that you want to get better, and then to go back to them over time and say, hey, how am I doing with that interrupting? Because I've been working on it. I'm just curious if you've noticed any improvements. Because when we proactively go and ask, then that saves that person having to build up the courage to come back to us again.
Yeah.
It seems so simple, but what happens is our egos get in the way because we want to justify, defend ourselves for why we did what we did. And then we set in motion this dynamic where the other person feels like we're pushing back, we're resisting, and they're not going to want to share information with us again.
Yeah. It reminds me of a book I read years ago on word of mouth marketing. And there was a statistic in there that said only 4% of people, this is mainly retail sort of service-based, but only 4% of people will ever complain.
Yeah.
And, so there, and it's probably true in every environment. So when you have somebody coming forth and letting you know something, you interrupt me, there's probably, well, do the math, 20 other people who you're doing the same thing to. And so there really is a sense of appreciation for that one person who's brought this to your attention, because there are other people who are feeling that and being impacted by that. And so it's not corrective action that impacts one person. It impacts, 96% of whoever else is.
Yeah,
there.
absolutely.
So.
And, Marshall Goldsmith in his book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There, talks about, speaking of marketing, you have to keep reminding people, you have to say your message over and over again to multiple people. Hey, I'm really working on this. So if you notice I'm improving, please let me know, because we need that additional feedback too, for our benefit, to see, am I just improving in my own mind, or is my behavior really changing with other people? That self-awareness is so key to all of our communication skills.
Right. Very good. Very good. Let's talk about Grow Strong Leaders. What's up? What's on the horizon? What's going for 2023?
It's very exciting because we have upgrades for our products. We have a 360-degree feedback tool, which is interesting in the context of what we've been talking about, because this is somebody receiving feedback, right? A leader feedback about their performance from multiple people. And one of the greatest things they can do is talk to the folks who provided that feedback and share what they learned from it. The other product we have is a survey tool that can be used to assess a team or an entire organization. So employee engagement surveys, those kinds of things. And then another online tool for building skills. So all of those are coming in probably early 2023. So lots of exciting things going there with our products. And with the books, the Connect with Your Team, we wanted to create a way for more people to learn about these various communication skills.
Right.
And needed.
Great. People who haven't finished their holiday shopping, there you go. There's a couple things you can stuff a stocking with. Well, I appreciate your time. I will put the website in the show notes. And Meredith Bell, happy holidays. Have a great new year, and we'll stay in contact.
Thank you, Frank. You bet.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.